So this is going to be a review of Violent Night, the new sort of R-rated Christmas action movie that just came out a few weeks ago. I actually saw this movie when it came out a few weeks ago. I'm a little late on giving out the review, but you know what? Better late than never, so here we go. Now, viewers have a big collection already of movies to watch during the Christmas season. You got Elf, Home Alone, The Grinch, A Christmas Story, etc. All of these movies, though, family-friendly fare, and as far as adult Christmas movies go, those are in short supply. There's not too many of those up there, at least ones that come out in the theaters. Up until now, the most prominent one was probably Bad Santa in 2003, starring Billy Bob Thornton. But that was hardly that memorable a movie and hasn't really gone on to become like a Christmas classic. And no, Die Hard is not a Christmas movie if you were wondering. But now Violent Night has come along, and based on the trailers, promised to be a vulgar, violent, and action-packed bloodfest starring Saint Nick himself. To give you a quick synopsis on the movie, on Christmas Eve, a down-on-his-luck Santa Claus finds himself in the middle of a hostage situation at a mansion, where his only option is to punch, kick, beat, and kill his way out of the situation, and save the family being held hostage. I referenced this movie earlier though, but the initial movie this will remind you of is Bad Santa, where the whole gimmick is, hey, look at Santa, being vulgar, crass, and vile. In the case of Bad Santa, it was just a regular guy in a Santa suit. But in this movie, it's Santa Claus himself. And Santa in this case is played by David Harbour. Now, David Harbour is definitely not the type that you would think to play Santa, even though he has somewhat of the physique for it. He's definitely not your typical Santa when it comes to his voice, personality, and even the look in his face. It's very different. While it's obviously different from any kind of Santa Claus you would normally see in a movie, that's what makes it work in this case, is seeing a different kind of crass, vulgar Santa Claus, and not just like what they did in Bad Santa, where it's just a dude in a Santa Claus suit. Here it's the real Santa Claus acting this way. And that's what makes it fun to see. And David Harbour ends up being great casting on that front. He's not doing anything different from the typical, sort of David Harbour personality that you normally think of, mainly Stranger Things when it comes to that. But he's still fun to see in this role, and David Harbour is just an entertaining guy to watch in action. He's also shown in the main stuff he's done, like Stranger Things, Black Widow, and now this, that he has the real sort of physicality and enthusiasm to be an action star. He really sort of puts his all into that kind of stuff. When he's sort of talking about him doing his own stunts, all these sequences, it's great stuff to watch him. I just mentioned the action, and the action is definitely the element, along with the vulgarity, that separates this from any kind of typical Christmas fare. I mentioned that the only way for Santa to save these hostages is to take on these captors in brutal fashion. And the movie has plenty of hardcore combat fights, close combat fights, where the movie sort of pushes its R rating to deliver some whoa kind of fights. From the very first fight, you get the vibes that, man, this movie's going to have some really, if all the fights are going to be like this, it's going to be a fun movie. Because the close combat fights in this are well shot, well choreographed, and all of them have a moment that makes you say, God damn, definitely didn't get to see that in any sort of a Christmas movie on Disney Channel, I'll put it that way. You get a consistent amount of these fights in the movie once the action really starts to get started, and all of these scenes deliver in good fashion. Thankfully, they write these bad guys in a fashion where you certainly won't mind them seeing get offed in brutal fashion, one by one. In speaking of these bad guys, it would be a good time to mention the main bad guy here, played by John Leguizamo, who plays a pretty good main villain in this, as he's the leader of these mercenaries looking to get a big payday out of the family they're holding hostage in this mansion-type place. He's good, and he and the rest of the sort of bad guy crew that got here fulfilled their roles in satisfactory fashion. In the grand scheme of things, unlike Die Hard, this film is as much a comedy as it is an action film. I did think, though, in the first half of the film, the comedy was kind of hit and miss for me. They go through all the vulgar stuff that a Santa Claus can do or say, and that stuff was fine. I did get some good chuckles out of that. But to be honest, I thought a lot of the comedy that was involving the family being held hostage, well, didn't make me laugh all that much. But then again, comedy is subjective, so there may be some decent amount of people that got a kick out of it. Through the ups and downs of the movie, I was fairly enjoying myself. I had a decent time with it through the first half of the movie or so. Like I said, a little hit and miss when it came to stuff, but at least the action delivered. But it was about 60% through the movie is where things took a quality turn in one scene. We get a scene that pays tribute to everyone's favorite Christmas movie, Home Alone. I'm being a little sarcastic with that, but you know what I mean. and it references Home Alone or pays tribute to Home Alone, specifically the trap scenes. Now, in that movie, that's the thing that I think a lot of viewers really loved was the traps. However, since that movie was obviously family-friendly fare, for the most part, they obviously couldn't go all out on the brutality that some of these traps would cause. Well, you get that here. It's a scene so good that you felt the entire audience come on board to the whole movie, to where this scene was just so good. It's a scene that really just comes out of nowhere, and you just watch it and like, whoa, now that's some enjoyable stuff. And the scene got better and better as it went along. And so I was like, wow, this movie is really taking a turn for the better right here. From that point on, the movie, which was already crazy, it was almost as if it took a shot of adrenaline at that point, to where then it became nonstop R-rated craziness that was action-packed and more importantly fun. You know, the movie really discovered a winning formula at that point, to where it had a very worthwhile 30 minutes or so that made the entire movie, which was at the time was definitely not a great movie, ended up being a fun one, at least definitely at the end. Ultimately, you'll get an R-rated Christmas movie here that defies expectations from the typical holiday offerings you would get during this time of year. I would end up giving a 7.5 out of 10 for Violent Night. The audience that I saw this with definitely had a great time. And the best thing here is that there's definitely potential for sequels if this movie ends up being a pretty big hit. The final kill in this movie has to be seen to believe, I'll put it that way. It's a true Christmas miracle. But the good thing here though is that through all the violence, vulgarities, etc., it still ends up being a true Christmas movie with a real Christmas message and Christmas heart. So you get the best of both worlds with the violence and actually a good Christmas or a decent Christmas message. You know what I mean. So there would be my review for Violent Night. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching.